vibration through text, so I'm awake.
Okay.
Last night you were watching TV.
Oh, yeah, it kind of looks so, doesn't it?
Well, I could see it in your glasses.
Yeah, it's on. Oh,
Hi, Marilyn.
Marilyn,
Hi, Mark.
you okay? Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. How's everybody?
Doing
Good.
all right. Well, I have 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
And since most of us are joining us by Zoom and the other are here, I'll go ahead and call the May 12th Garden City Board of Trustees meeting to order. I would just like to, first we're going to make sure we announce when we're speaking, but also we're going to do a roll call for present. So it's Blake Wassinger present.
Shanda Smith, present.
Beth Tedrow, present.
David Rupp, present.
Leonard Hitz, present.
Marilyn Douglas, present by virtual space.
Okay, and I know we have Colin Lamb, Mark, Carla, and Ryan and Amy here. So just a few points to speak on. Of course, we had the 100th commencement ceremony, and while not typical, was still a neat event and was very well done. I think currently we've had over 3,500 views on YouTube to date, and I think they had a little over 500 or 575 while the commencement was going on. Ryan and the whole team did an excellent job of making lemonade out of lemons, so that was pretty neat. And just to reiterate the distribution, the CARES Act funding, we kind of talked about that earlier, but based on the criteria for eligible students, over the next week, approximately 684 students are going to get distributed, a little over $580,000. I'm sure Dr. Ruda will touch base on that. So that's nice to see some money going back to students. There's some other money I know that the college has been receiving. Maybe Dr. Ruda can touch base on that a little bit too. But anything that helps the students, the time that we're in, and it seems like it's been a long month again since we've met, but obviously a lot of good things are happening, and we're starting to see things slowly getting back to normal. But other than that, I will have a few other points that I'll speak towards the end of the meeting, but that's all I have as far as opening up. Introduction of new employees.
I don't think we have any that are joining us here.
Yeah.
We'll probably, once we resume back here, just bring employees in there.
Okay, so no worry to go through. Okay. Well, then we'll go ahead and move on to item number 2, the consent agenda. I'd ask if anybody would like anything removed for discussion on the consent agenda.
I'd like item F removed for discussion.
I would agree with you. So, yep, we'll go ahead and anybody else would like anything else removed?
Yeah, Blake, it's Marilyn. I'd like item E removed just for some information.
Okay, and then item F, Leonard, I'll just go ahead and, Leonard asked for that to be removed.
No, I wanted F.
I know, F. I was just reiterating.
I said E.
No, Marilyn said E. I just, when you said it, you wanted it removed. I just want to make sure. So.
I've been to a meeting for a month.
So anybody else would like anything removed for further discussion? Okay. So with that, I'd like a motion to approve consent agenda A through D as presented, removing E and F for further discussion.
Leonard Hitz, I make a motion, we approve A through D.
I'll second that. Beth, second it.
Leonard motion, Beth seconded. All those in favor for approving the consent agenda A through D, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, we'll do a roll call. This is Blake Wassinger, approve.
Shanda Smith, aye.
Beth Tedrow, aye.
David Rupp, aye.
Leonard Hitz, aye.
Marilyn Douglas, aye.
Okay, that passes. So item E, Marilyn, you had some questions or discussion about the tax incentive?
Yeah, I just wanted to get some clarification on what it means to apply for a grant for a tax credit. That was one thing that I didn't understand. And were these tables going to be replacing cadavers in the anatomy lab? And it comments that they are movable. So I was wondering if you meant, or if they were going to be transported from different sites to the high schools. So just a little more information about the process and the purchase or the application.
Absolutely. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so the tax credit there each year through the Department of Commerce there, they open up an application process there for nonprofits to be able to submit grant applications there for the opportunity to sell tax credits. It's a tax credit incentive grant proposal. So essentially you submit your grant to the Department of Commerce. Our particular grant, the due date will be the end of May, which at that point then the Department of Commerce reviews and determines which grants are approved for the authority and the ability to be able to sell tax credits for their, for the grant purposes that they've written towards. So if you are approved, then you would have 18 months starting July 1st of 2020 through December 31st of 2021 to be able to sell the tax credits. The way that we have written this and worked with the individual who's helping to develop our grant application for us is that we are writing specifically to be serving rural high schools. Because of that because we're serving rural high schools, then we would have the ability to, you either have a 50% tax credit threshold or a 70% tax credit threshold. So we are applying for the 70% threshold, which means we're serving only communities and populations that are under 15,000 in population. So currently we have, you'd asked about whether these are replacing our cadavers. These are in addition to the cadavers, so they would not be replacing what we currently have. But what this does there is it also starts to, we have about 10 to 12 high schools that we've been partnering with that have written letters of support for this in Southwest Kansas. So what this would do is essentially these are mobile tables that would allow us to be able to loan this out to, say, Cimarron High School. And Cimarron High School could be able to have this for a month period of time when they're doing any type of work there on anatomy. And what it does is it allows them to be able to have an interactive application similar to being able to have a cadaver, but you're able to actually get some hands-on experience and do dissections on these tables. And these are all, the way that these particular tables are there, these are actually live individuals who have donated themselves to science. So they have specific types of diseases, cancer, that you can be able to go in there and see how cancer affects various organs or how smoking affects various organs. And so there's a lot of hands-on application that we have that you can use in health sciences, you can use in really being able to expand a lot of the career orientation aspects of STEM. And that's where a lot of our focus has been, is really trying to figure out how we can help high schools be able to better embed anatomy and physiology, health concepts, be able to do it in a much more hands-on learning application. So I don't know if you have additional questions. I mean, that's really the intent. So Garden City Community College would be the owner of these tables, but we would loan them out to the high schools on a rotating basis throughout the year. We would transport them to the 10 to 12 high schools that we have that we are partnering with on this grant. And they would just coordinate through us there as far as when they would want the tables, and we would be able to work with them. The other side of that, and what we've been working on a partnership with, is with Fort Hays to be able to have some summer instructional programming and some workshops that we would have with the instructors from these 10 high schools that would come to campus and actually be able to get trained on these tables, learn about some of the additional curriculum that may be coming available. So it's a way to be able to interact with the instructors and provide some continuous learning and additional learning aspects there with them in the summertime as well. The other aspect that they've added to this there is that also on these tables, they have just added the ability to have animals. So you can do dogs, you can do cats, you can do cattle. So a lot of the other application that we're looking at there is to be able to incorporate this in with some things that Clint and Cindy are doing, incorporate it into some pre-vet, and really honestly is a lot of it's trying to expand the interest in STEM areas and be able to expand the learning applications.
It sounds amazing. And I just, I remember that we sold tax credits before for, I think it was maintenance kind of things. So the way that works, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you buy, or we sell to the public if they want like $1,000 tax or a donation, and then they get to claim a certain percentage as a tax credit. Is that right?
Yes.
Yep. Spot on. Yeah. So if they did a $1,000 donation, because we're applying for the 70% threshold, they would be able to claim 70% of that donation then on taxes.
Sign me up.
How long does a cadaver last? I wanted to say, what's the life of a cadaver, but I knew that wouldn't be the right way to say it.
Based on the smell, not long.
They're not for, don't we have to replace those occasionally?
Yeah, typically rotate them. We rotate them on an annual basis.
Typically through a dissection, you go through full completion of dissection. And honestly, by the end, through a full anatomy course, they've been dissected. So usually it's unless it's like use small pieces, small parts for next semester or something, most of the time it's through a year, and usually they get rotated out.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to class.
Seen the real stuff. So, any other questions? Any discussion on that? The tax incentive grants. Is that clear for everyone? No, good program. Okay. Well, we'll move on to item F, and I know everyone should have gotten some supplemental information on that and had looked through. I myself would like to have it removed too, but Leonard, I open up for discussion, but Leonard, did you have something in mind you wanted to speak on?
I have some questions about this. Now, we learned of that we were probably going to have a lawsuit somewhere back in May when we approved $100,000 for that purpose. Then in August, we came back and put another $100,000. My question, big question I have right now is, why all of a sudden are we hit with a $58,000, 59,000 new invoices? And are these invoices that we didn't know about? Or has Randy been in touch with these people? Has he been keeping pace with what they're doing as they're doing it? Or are we just said, go get it and turn them loose? Who's been overseeing the attorneys that are doing this? But my big question right now is, I'm sure we get monthly invoices from the attorneys, do we not? Do we get monthly invoices, Carla? You're kidding. I don't know a law firm anywhere that will not send monthly invoices.
No,
See, that bothers me that then all of a sudden, we're not knowing anything. All of a sudden, we're hit with another $59,000 of invoices that we have no control over. And I think if that's the case, I think our attorney's remiss in not staying abreast with it. We hired him to take care of a lot of this stuff, and he's recommended these people. He's the one basically that recommended we hire him. In fact, I'm hard pressed to want to even think about approving them. Now, Carla, are you got more information that you have worked out with these folks since I got the memos?
Well, I don't know that we've worked out anything. Part of the frustration on Louis Brisbois' part, as well as ours, is they did not receive the last two invoices from Dr. Walters until February and late in December. And this was work done in like October. So the last two invoices that are open, $34,000 that we haven't paid or that wasn't invoiced, was sent very late from Dr. Walters. The other part that was very frustrating to all of us was on the initial amount that was paid to the $25,000 retainer. And so there was a lot of miscommunication with the initial 10-page billing that we received from them. And so basically, because we hired the law firm, Dr. Walters worked through them. And so when we received the initial $100,000, $98,027.21 billing, initially we were like, well, we're going to take $25,000 off of that because we've already paid them $25,000. And so that's what we did. So in digging further through all of this, what we identified was that Dr. Walters' billing, which was a pass-through billing through the law firm, it wasn't really clearly identified, but they actually reduced his billing by that $25,000, which honestly took us a lot of paper shuffling to actually identify what the situation was. So there wasn't, so that's another frustration. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, the total billing for this project was just a little shy of $250,000. So we did have a conference call with the law firm last week. It was Randy Grizel, Randy Alamet from the law firm, Ryan and I, and Alan Rupp, the lead attorney for the law firm. It was frustrating. It was a frustrating conversation for myself because there was a lot of justification on their part as to why the investigation cost more than originally estimated. So that's, Ryan, I don't know, you can.
yeah, I think the only thing that I would add there, I mean, just going off of what you said, I mean, that frustration, and it was a very spirited conversation with them last week. Frustration is that when they presented two frustrations. One, the lead attorney that had been working with us and that had presented the proposal to us back in 2019, Jordan, ended up leaving the law firm Lewis Briscoe at the end of 2019. So we didn't have the liaison, and the lead person who was coordinating and communicating back and forth with the college once she left. Our understanding, once Lewis Briscoe had presented the college on the board with the report, with the external report and their review in December, was that when they presented that report, their billing and their invoices were final. We did not receive any additional communication, any additional information, any additional insight there at all from Lewis Briscoe until we received the most recent invoice there that was then longer forwarded to you there as far as the additional billing. So last week during the conference call, I think the wording was negligence that I used, but I think the frustration is that because we were the entity that retained Lewis Briscoe, regardless of the fact of the things that are outside of our control as far as not being able to get a hold of other entities that had worked the night with Braden, other entities outside of the college, other individuals that are not employees at the college, they were struggling to be able to set up and get meetings in place with them. Well, because they were lacking the ability to get these meetings, their clock was still ticking. They were still accumulating the hours and being able to have billable hours to us there in lieu of things that are outside of our control on individuals and organizations that we did not have any knowledge of. So what they were explaining to us is because they were having difficulties getting a hold of former employees, other organizations that had worked the scene or that had done autopsies and done reports on the things that are outside of our control, we were still being billed and we were still being held accountable for things there, even though these other organizations or people were not communicating or directly having any interaction there with Lewis Briscoe during this investigation period. So the billing that Carla's referencing there and what they had alluded to was Dr. Walters had been hired by Lewis Briscoe to be the medical expert. He did not submit the billing to Lewis Briscoe until the end of February. Well, the billing that we're just now receiving is the billing that Dr. Walters, the medical expert, had passed along to Lewis Briscoe that is being sent to us there 3.5 months later.
Where is this law firm located?
Has offices all over the United States.
Who are we talking to? Where are they located?
The one individual was out of Wichita. The Randy is out of the Seattle office. Randy Alamant is out of the Seattle office. The other attorney that we have been working with, Jordan, was out of the Wichita office. And then Dr. Walters is from, I can't remember where he's from, down south somewhere. But they have offices all over.
I think our attorney is remiss in not staying on top of this. That's where
Leonard,
my frustration is.
the other thing I would just add that was, I think that added to the frustration was because we had hired them to do an external investigation. Just by the nature of that, there was limited contact with the individuals doing the investigation. Right, wrong, different. That was the scenario.
I would say to our attorney, why aren't you staying on top of this?
I think what Carla was saying, alluding to, is just that fact that in order for it not to be appeared to be tainted or not to appear to be biased, Randy, our attorney, stayed pretty much hands out of it. And a big firm like that, and I would just, I concur with your frustration on the part of their, Lewis Bristol is a big law firm. They should, I put the blame on just the mere fact that they did not stay in communication with us. When we receive the report, most would assume you're not handing over a report unless it's paid for, or at least we understand. I think to all of us, we were surprised. I think the lack of communication, I think, maybe it's a big firm and they just go about their business and they don't think of, our funds or, my frustration is though that, we were sold a quote unquote, under $100,000, to get it done. We were told that our internal investigation would piggyback off of it and hopefully would speed up time. And that did not even seem to be a non-issue. And here we're 3 times over the amount. We came back after we said it wasn't going to go over this amount and had to approve. And not even that, they said 50,000 or 60,000, and we bumped it to 100,000 to not have to come back and have this conversation. And here we are having this conversation. To me, it is a blatant disregard on their part, keeping us informed. And, I understand. You look at the time, I've been in conversation with Ryan. You look at their billing, it is what it is. I mean, we can't contest that. And I'm not contesting that, but I'm contesting the fact that they should have been told us if they were looking at, hey, this is going to go over, or if we're looking at that, they need to keep us informed, because we're not some big private firm that says get the project done. We have taxpayers. We have a budget that we have to stay on. We have a board approved for this amount. If it was going to go over, it looked like it was going to go over, we needed to be aware of that. And I don't put necessarily the blame on Randy, because again, he was staying out of it. I think it's a learning experience. I hope, knock on wood, that we never have an incident like this again, that we need an internal or external investigation. But I certainly hope that we can learn from this too, and try to be up on top of it, more communication.
I feel like they have completely used or desire to do everything we can in this situation, to treat it like their own little personal slot machine. And I mean, I feel like they have taken advantage of us.
Sure. Yeah.
If we'd been getting progress reports all along and reports of where the costs were, I wouldn't be so upset, because I would have been knowing about it as we was going along, knowing we were going to have to make some adjustment somewhere. But to just get slapped up with it
After we thought the matter was settled.
after we agreed
billing.
a certain number, and then all of a sudden, here's another $50,000 I think we owe them. I don't think we owe them.
This is Blake again, and I would just say it's bad business practice to hold a bill, to keep holding a bill over anybody. I know in my practice, I know certainly anybody that runs business, the last thing you want to do is slap somebody with an unexpected bill. If you keep communication, whether that's evolving, whether that's incurring or not, you keep somebody informed and you keep them, hey, this is where it's at. Some people don't care. I understand that. Some people do. Some people like to understand that. And I think it's just a bad business practice on their part. Again, in the dark about it. It is what it is. We don't have any contestant. Leonard, I said the same thing to Ryan, about, fighting it or paying it, or, it's their word against ours. And the bad thing about it is it worth going through the credits process and ruining our credit during this time, or having other issues and
Having a lawsuit.
having to go to court or something. I mean, and at what cost, you're going to spend more to defend it. And that's you're right.
That's why
And
they've done this,
why
is they have taken advantage.
I know. So I see the frustration, and I'm just as frustrated, and I think every one of us should be frustrated about it, but it doesn't change the fact. And
Have we seen the report? I don't remember seeing the report.
Yeah, it was delivered to us there in December 2019.
Leonard, you looked at it.
Well, I might have. I said I don't remember.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, you did. Hey,
Yeah.
this is Marilyn. You know, I think if you're trying to blame or find fault, it really should fall on Lewis Brisbane for not paying attention to the invoices from Dr. Walters and allowing him to submit one so late. So I think, and I think you guys are taking care of that. I mean, we have to make this final payment, but we make sure that there is no other outstanding something that we're going to be hit with later. And also maybe even sending a letter with the payment saying how disappointed we are for their business practice of allowing this extra late bill that we're going to pay so that they look good in Dr. Walters' eyes.
Yeah, I intended to have a letter that would match very similar to the email that I sent to them that has, has our disdain or discourse for how this whole process was handled. I mean, I think, as many of you have alluded to there, when you go in and you enter into a contractual agreement, you assume that when you have a good that you are expecting to receive, that when you receive that good, such as the report, that is the final essence of this contractual agreement. And so, I would agree. I mean, I think there's a letter that I will draft, and it will match very similar to the messaging that I've sent previously. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's right, wrong, or indifferent. I think we're going to spend more to defend it, unfortunately, versus just moving on down the road.
This is Beth. I have a question, Ryan. When you send the letter, can we also draft something or have Randy draft something that this is it? No more, this is final payment, so that we are absolved of any other late payments coming in.
We can, and the other piece that we've also put into writing and received an email back from them there, that's verification or confirmation that this is the final invoice.
Okay.
But we can ask Randy to draft that there. Just
I think that would be good, that we have the.
This is Blake one more time, and I think, as to when you're given a quote, we understand there's going to be some variance, but like I said, 300% more, they're a big firm. They should know better. I mean, 10%, 15%, 20%, things happen. I understand. But to that, like I said, I hope, God forbid, I hope we never have something like this happen to occur again, where we have to have an external investigation. But I would certainly, whether I'm on the board or whether I'm not on the board, or if it ever happens, but I would, I'd hope that we maybe reconsider maybe a different law firm, or at least look at the options out there, because just this practice alone has certainly given me a bad taste to the way this law firm handles things. So,
Carla, this is Leonard. In this last invoice for $59,000, you guys have had some discussion with them. Was there any negotiating that amount down?
No, I mean, as with most legal billings, very detailed, down to not the second, but certainly the minute. But with Dr. Walters' invoices, I really can't speak to the detail of those. That was just a pass through to the law firm. But as Ryan and I visited with them last week, they had many reasons as to why the estimate in the beginning, what they were presented and why they had that estimate, and then what the reality was once they got here. it kind of becomes a he said, she said deal. And so, you know, they have their documentation as to, you know, their diligence in billing. Now, Dr. Walters, I don't, you know, I can't speak to that.
This is Shanda. Do we know on those bills from Dr. Walters if they're straight pass through or they're marking those up at all to make margin on them as well?
No, they're a straight pass through. We got the summary of his billing. We just didn't get all the detail of them, which we really don't want, because the arrangement was purposeful that because we didn't know what they would find. I mean, you know, the report's going to be the report, but it was the recommendation that we hire the law firm and they hired the expert.
This is David, and I agree with everybody. I mean, being in that type of field of investigations before things come up, I understand that, but also when doing investigations like that, if you reach to a point where you gave a quote, it was even, we kept on that quote or we informed the client. But I really agree with Beth of having something in writing or something from them saying it's paid in full, so they don't try coming back. I've seen that from lawyers before too.
You can restrict your endorsement when you put it on there, paid in full.
Yeah, hard conversation.
Yep, certainly is. Anyone else like to add anything? Doesn't make it easy, that's for sure. Well, with that, we still have those line items to approve.
Would we be out of line? Oh, this is Beth again. Would we be out of line when we approve it, that we approve it under protest? Or at least leave it alone?
Don't think it would hurt a thing.
No. Yep.
I think that would be something that the
Reluctant.
attorney should hear.
You can do one at a time, and if you want to, if somebody wants to make a motion on the first one or together or however you want to do it. Yep, just note it in the minutes. Okay.
So do we want to do them separate or?
Yeah, if let's do it separate. So I need a motion for item E of the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve item E of the consent agenda.
And that's David.
This is Shanda, I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those opposed? All right, and then we'll do a roll call for the approval of item E. Blake, approved.
Shanda, aye.
Beth, aye.
David, aye.
Leonard, aye.
Marilyn, approved.
And then we'll need a motion on item F.
This is Beth. I move that we pay the increased amount of billing to the law firm to cover the doctor, but we under protest for not being informed of this. And do I need to clean that up?
I would just do the line item. Just say, prove that.
Oh, line item F.
Increased spending.
Increased spending authority for external investigation under protest.
Are we going to put a dollar restriction on that?
I think the approval was an additional 50,000.
Additional 50 is.
In the agenda, it was at 50,000. That's going to cover it.
Page 36.
Yep, page 36 in the. So
I was just wording it like it
right,
was on the
right.
agenda.
So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
This is David, I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve line item F, increased spending authority for external investigation with protest.
All those in favor say aye.
Uh,
All
Aye.
those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, and then we'll go ahead and do a roll call. This is Blake, aye.
Shanda, nay.
Beth, I,
David, I.
Leonard, no.
Marilyn, aye.
Okay. Okay, that passes. So we'll go into the confirmation of monitoring reports. So the confirmation, monitoring reports and ends, that's the executive limitation treatment of people. The 1 through 4, that starts on page 37. The Marilyn, do we usually read through them? At least the comment, or I mean, not the comment, the interpretation, but necessarily the limitation. Do we normally speak to that, and then, or do we just kind of go through a consensus as a general whole?
I like to have it noted in the
Okay.
minutes, which
Okay.
one yeah, so I'd like to read each one,
Okay.
not the whole thing, but
Sure. Okay. So the first one being number 1 with respect to treatment of students, employees, volunteers, and the community dealings shall not be inhumane, unfair, or undignified. And of course, the CO's interpretation. You normally don't say that, or the data. That we normally just go through each one, right?
yeah, I just see if anybody has any
Okay.
comments.
Okay. Okay. Anyone
And
have
if
any?
not, then you say that it's approved as presented.
Okay. Anybody have any comments to that one? The first one? Comments or? No? I'm sorry, that's the preamble. So number 1 is the president shall not operate without procedures which clarify student and staff rules, provide for effective handling of grievances and complaints, and protect against wrongful conditions. And of course, the interpretation and the data behind that is presented there. Anyone have any comments to speak of, or?
This is Marilyn. I just want to say that I peeked in on the website on the policies and procedures that are presented in this. It's a cleaner format. It's easier to look up each of the policies. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Right. And then number 2, the president shall not discriminate against anyone for expressing their opinion. And then the interpretation, obviously the data behind that. I just say that I think Dr. Ruta's done a pretty good job of standing by that over the last year, moving forward. Anybody have any comments, anything? No?
Nope.
And then number 3 would be the president shall not withhold a complaint, grievance, or appeal procedure from faculty, staff, or students. Again, interpretation and data. Some of these are pretty straightforward. There's processes in place and redundancy with HR. Any comments to that? No, all good. Consensus across, okay. And then number 4, the president shall not fail to acquaint students and staff with the rights and with their rights and responsibilities. Pretty lengthy interpretation, but the data behind that, make a pretty good point when students come in and their policy handbooks and things. So anyone have comments towards that?
Well, this is David, and do faculty and staff have to review this every year? Is there any way of knowing that they've read them?
The policies,
Yes.
so as far as having to read through them, no, we don't require that they read through them there. However, we do have an annual review process there where we go through and review policies on an annual basis. To coincide that there with around the evaluation period and time on that. So we don't have a formal process there where we require that once they've signed off there through the new employee orientation process there, that they know policies and know where policies are located there, then we do not have anything more formally there through that period.
I just know from previous employment that they gave out tests on some of the policies.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have something in place saying, I read this and they signed it, then they're responsible.
Yeah, we've formalized a lot of our processes there where on an annual basis, there's training we all undergo for blood pathogens, for discrimination, harassment. So there's ongoing online training that we formalize and that they take tests on there based on that. So while it's not necessarily all policies, ones that are specific to treatment of people and discrimination and harassment are on an annual basis for training.
That's good.
Ryan, could I add some things to that?
Yes.
So one of the things that it's very positive that has happened through our current work situation is that, well, we've made a lot of advancements in HR with our training and our onboarding processes and even our orientation process. And so what we're currently doing, because we can't meet face-to-face, and according to our HR director, actually has been more effective with our current process, is that setting the expectation and letting actually, doing a Zoom meeting, taking them to where the policies and procedures are, or the policies are, and kind of doing a share your screen type situation. And so it's not just a blanket, I understand. And like Dave says, we haven't given them a test, but I think there's a higher sense of understanding. And like Ryan mentioned, we are using some technology to increase our annual trainings, which, is always good. So, thank you.
Well, this is David. I look at this and think it's very good for the organization, especially since we've had the previous problems. We are addressing those problems.
Very good.
This is Marilyn. The only other, I would just note Dr. Ruta's comment there on page 40 that there are no formal reported staff or student appeals for the 2019-20 academic years outside of academic or disciplinary actions. So I think that speaks highly to the administration and the communication and the morale on campus. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Well, those are the 4 monitoring reports and ends, and that's just a consensus. So everyone in agreement, all presented us.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. With that, we'll move on. We have no public comments signed up? Nope. And they were given that time up until 5 o'clock? Well in advance? Okay, perfect. So we'll move on to the president's report.
Yeah, just a few points of things, and we'll elaborate just and echo some of the things that Dr. Wassinger had mentioned. But we did have in these unusual times that we're in, our first ever virtual commencement this past Friday, and particularly with it being our 100th commencement ceremony and the 100th graduating class, felt like it was a very quality production. I just want to commend the work of Shrinkland Photography and Shajia and so many of the others, staff members and committee members that helped to be able to put that together, because it was a tremendous undertaking, but a very quality production. And, as Dr. Wassinger mentioned, we've had over 3,500 views on YouTube there with us. They've had a lot of positive comments there from students and parents, just appreciating the fact that we still found a way to be able to celebrate student success. So wanted to highlight that. As far as the spring semester, a couple of things, wrapping up the spring semester, finals are occurring this week. At the end of the spring semester, happy to report that enrollment was up 70 students, so about 4.2% on students. Credit hours, we ended up being down about 0.3%. I want to put that just a little bit in context or perspective here. When we went into the distance learning modality in the middle of March, credit hours are up approximately 1.5, 1.6%. So, the concern is in this time frame of transitioning to a different mode of learning, that we would experience some loss of credit hours. And I just want to give credit where credit's due as far as the work of faculty and staff and really helping to work with students and helping to make the loss of credit hours negligible to where we were still up on students and only experienced approximately 1% loss of credit hours through that transition to distance learning. So, I think that speaks volumes there just with the processes that we have in place. So focus now moves to summer and fall enrollment. Both summer and fall enrollment is open right now. The admissions office reported this week that we have approximately 261 students that are registered or pre-registered for early enrollment days online. So we have had some early enrollment days occurring already and have several through this week and then ongoing through May and June. To where we'll be doing virtual orientation, virtual advising and enrollment, but starting to work and coordinate our efforts there on that end. The other piece that I would focus on there pretty heavily as far as the time commitment and where we've been working on, and just echoing again what Dr. Wassinger has mentioned, over the course of this past week, through the stimulus funds that came through the CARES Act, we have distributed approximately $572,000 worth of student aid directly to 723 eligible students. So there's been a tremendous amount of work through financial aid in the business office and administration to be able to get this coordinated and to be able to have this amount of money going out to students per the guidance that we have there from the Department of Education. So these checks have gone out in this past week. Now we turn our attention on the student side there to online. We have a application for emergency grant funds. Students can be able to apply for these emergency grant funds. Any type of expenses that they've had, whether it be housing, technology, childcare, that they would be able to apply for, and our financial aid office will start to work through those applications. Currently, we've received approximately 180 grant applications that we will begin to process and start working through awarding the additional student funds that we have. So, keep in mind we had 641,000 that was allocated to us through the stimulus funds. To this point here so far, we have awarded and allocated 570,000. Working through things. This past week, we also received some additional guidance from the Department of Ed that we needed to update the website and have various information that will be displayed there prominently for students and for stakeholders in regards to the stimulus funds. So we've updated our website to be in compliance with the Department of Ed as of this week. The additional piece that I would say, so in addition to the student funding, we also have received the same amount of funding that would go towards institutional costs. So we have 641,000. Now we start to turn our attention to how we'd be able to, for the guidance that we have, start to allocate and use those funds And then this past week, we also received notice that since Garden City Community College is designated as a minority serving institution, that through that designation, there is an additional $83,000 that has been made available through the Department of Ed with the stimulus funds there as well. So we'll, again, start working through the process and following guidance and determining how it is that we can utilize those to be able to offset revenue losses and other aspects that are allowable through the stimulus funds with that. A few other points just to talk through. We have also implemented, this past week, we've implemented a reopening committee. This committee, which is headed by Carla and also has other administration staff and various departments on campus representing that, is working to be able to provide a framework for reopening. So following with the plan that's been set forth by Governor Kelly and also with regard to the Finney County and local phases for reopening, this committee is beginning to develop policies and protocol that will help guide us as we move towards the process of reopening. At this point, we've not set any date specific to reopening, but working in the direction of being able to have the policies and practices in place here for when we get to that point. Also working at developing some policies and protocol there, particularly on the residential life side. Colin has been leading a group there that's taking a look at the measures and the preventative steps that we need to take on the residential life there as well. So taking considerable amount of work and precaution to be able to keep safety in mind there as we work towards reopening. Last 2 points I mentioned last week or last month there that we had formed an alliance and a partnership with Fort Hays State called Transfer Connect. We have done an announcement and some press releases there on that there to announce formally the Transfer Connect partnership. Pleased to announce we have 5 students that have signed up already for being able to have dual advising through this partnership. So what this partnership does there is it takes students that come to Garden City Community College, and from the very onset of them coming, once they denote or designate that Fort Hays State is the transfer institution of their choice, through this partnership there, then they can sign up to be assigned an advisor through Fort Hays as well. So then our advising and their advising are working hand in hand through the process of while they're here to help for a more seamless process and help with classes, making sure they're counting towards majors and being able to help align the transfer process. But with Fort Hays being our top transfer institution at Garden City, we felt like this was incumbent on us to be able to find a path forward, and appreciate the work of a lot of our staff and with the partnership with Hays to be able to take this to the next level. And then the final point that I would make, just want to give credit to Mark for his work on this area, is that we have been notified that we received the Rural Business Development Grant. And this grant will cover costs of equipment for the carpentry program that will be opening in the fall. So we will begin to work with that advisory council and develop a plan for getting the equipment ordered to get that in place for this fall semester. So a lot of work and a lot of things that are going in a positive direction there as we head towards fall.
Ryan, what's the thought in the conference on football season? I know they've been talking about maybe not a fewer games. Is there any thought at all right now other than nobody really knows anything?
That's
pretty much
that last comment's probably the best way to sum it up. There's been several scenarios. I know Greg he's on weekly meetings there with both the national office and the JHOC conference. We did just have JHOC conference meetings here a week ago. Really, they're kind of laying out several different scenarios. One is to be able to move into the fall semester and continue as it's mapped out for a start right now. The other scenarios that they're looking at are doing a shortened season. So essentially pushing back the start of it to September, shortening the season by some games. They're also looking at the possibility of moving all fall sports to the spring. So we would not have any fall sports. You would have everything in the spring. And then the other option is that there are no fall sports, period. So, you know, from the national office and really the national stance, what they've taken is that they are planning to be able to have some type of announcement on what their direction, their vision for the national landscape of community colleges is by June 15th. So we're kind of working in that direction. The JHOC conference right now has put into place there a restriction that there's no face-to-face workouts or anything through the end of June. So at least right now, for the point that we're in, we know through June there's no face-to-face workouts conditioned or anything there that can be occurring at least to that point.
I'd sure hate to see us give up all of our fall sports.
Yeah, you and me both for several reasons.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, I think, you know, honestly, from our standpoint there, I mean, and speaking frankly from the direction I have there, I mean, our goal and the direction we're moving in there is to be able to be face-to-face in the fall. But I know on the instruction side, we're also working at some hybrid options and looking at how we can be able to have face-to-face and virtual simultaneously, to where, you know, if there is another round of COVID in the fall semester and we have to transition back to online there, that it's not as big of a transition to distance ed as what we had there this semester. So we're looking at several ways to be able to transition things and still have elements of both in place, but looking to be able to get back to the old normal and having the face-to-face and the traditional setting.
Ryan, this is Marilyn. I just have this kind of crazy question. In the fall, if we are having students on campus and we end up with positive COVID patients, are we liable for their health?
Well, I think so.
You know, that's a good question. I mean, I think, you know, we've had webinars upon top of webinars, and I know we've all sat through things there as far as how it is that we can best discern and work through things there when we start to reopen and transition back. You know, several of the thoughts that we've had, and speaking to your point as far as liability, are really working in different directions. If we have individuals that do test positive, you know, one option is to say that you need to be able to go home for 14 days quarantine until you are not symptomatic. The other thing that we're looking at there is to be able to have designated housing set up there for quarantine housing on campus that we would be able to look at. But I know the other pieces, and Colin's working through this there as well, but I mean, we're working through a lot of different scenarios to where we look at, you know, whether we have single rooms in the residence halls, you know, looking to try to eliminate or decrease some of the liability. But the liability is really, you know, and we've been working with Trish Keller and Will with St. Catherine's and Finney County Health there as well, but increasing some of our testing procedures and increasing some of the access that we have there for being able to do testing here on campus as we move in that direction as well.
I think the frustrating part of that is you've got young individuals that think they're immune to everything. And, you know, you put these policies in place and we want to keep everyone safe, and, you know, one per dorm room or something. And, you know, they don't abide by it, but yet if we're still liable, and like I said, we certainly don't want to see anybody harmed or any complications. And I think that's why the concern of, you know, whether we have face-to-face or whether we do virtual or whether we bring back things, is because you're dealing with a population that's inherently somewhat rebellious, or, you know, that they know best and to some degree. And I think that's kind of hard to necessarily be able to, you know, make sure that they're safe, and certainly make sure that they're in a safe environment at the best possibility. So that's I think that's the conundrum.
Yeah.
Ryan,
Yes.
this is Carla. Do you want to talk anything about the legislative effort about the liability issue?
Yeah. Do you want to
Well,
talk through that?
Well, there is legislative action right now to put in statute that would protect us, that kind of broadens the negligence or the liability and negligence scope, if I would say that. So that's reassuring. Again, that doesn't negate legal action, but I think that on a legislative standpoint, they are trying to protect the governmental entities as much as they can.
Because currently community colleges are not included underneath that liability clause through statute. So it's adding community colleges to that.
Yeah, and Blake, you brought up a good point. You know, there can be legislation, there can be guidelines, there can be policies and regulations. It's how do you enforce them?
Yeah.
You know, and with the population, I mean, you know, how do you enforce? I mean, you try to just enforce curfew, you know, and curfew is going to be broken, you know, and so let alone trying to, you know, be on top of something like this, the enforcement of it is going to be tough. And it's just something that, like Ryan, Dr. Ruda said, we're trying to put some plans in place, but those things change on a daily basis. And but we're working hard and reaching out to see what other institutions are doing. Like Ryan said, on webinars, trying to figure out what's the best plan in the uncertain times.
This is David. What chance the legislators have passing that in one-day session?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Will it surface and will it make it to the point there of being something that's even discussed? Yeah. I don't know. I know from our liaison there in Topeka there with the community colleges there, she has sent that along there to the legislative bodies there for consideration. Whether that filters up there to be the point of contention that's discussed when they come back for one day, great question.
I would think that could be in an executive order, but except for executive orders only apply to the emergency disaster declaration, as from what I understand. But gosh, we better make sure community colleges are included in there.
Right.
Marilyn, say that that's one of the reasons that, I mean, policies are in place to protect the institution and people, and that's why we're really striving to do our due diligence and making sure that not only do we have the proper policies in place, but we also have the proper practices. And so we've, you know, so that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, that's David. If they follow the policies and stuff, I think they have a kind of a good faith exemption,
Right.
to a certain degree. So,
well, and I would say, you know, from our standpoint there, we're trying to be as proactive and predict as many of the scenarios as we can. You know, on the instruction side, I mean, we're looking at how it is that we can limit the number of students that may be in a classroom. You know, so even if you have a section of 25 students, we may limit the section one day to 12 students while the others are on Zoom, and flip-flop it on the second day. So if you have a Tuesday, Thursday class, you may be only face-to-face one day, Zoom the other day. So again, it's going back to that hybrid model or kind of that flipped classroom setting, to where we're still able to be putting some preventative steps and measures in place, but also being able to give that face-to-face experience there for students to the best extent possible.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone off of Dr. Ruda's report? Thanks, Dr. Ruda. Incidental information, of course, always included in there. Anybody would like to add comments or say something about the incidental information? No? Good. Finney County Economic Development, Dave?
No report.
No report. KACCT, Beth?
Yes, on April 27th, the executive committee voted, of KACCT, voted to have a Zoom conference on Saturday, June 6th from 8:15 to 9:45 a.m. To take care, it's a required by the bylaws to have the quarterly meetings, but everybody on the executive committee felt it was ridiculous to drive to Garden City. So we will, for April 5th, for the June 6th meeting, so it will be a Zoom conference for 1 hour and a half from 8:15 to 9:45. We can take care of then of the required things like paying the bills and things like that. It's not going to be very exciting, I guess, but that's when it's going to be. Anybody would like to come or set up the Zoom, I can give you the information.
We have the rare occasion that we get to host KCCT and show off our campus and everything. And it gets nixed, so. Hard to drive. Yeah, so, well, that's unfortunate, but of course, that'll be good for us to still continue on, obviously. No report from SGA, I'm assuming. And Faculty Senate, so we have. Do we have Nicole?
Nicole's an attendee. I don't know how that works.
Andrew will have to bring her up.
Nicole, ready to talk? Nicole, yeah. Closer.
It's your turn, Nicole.
Okay. Hi there.
Hi,
Hello.
Nicole.
All right. I'll keep it pretty short. So Dr. Ruda already said a lot of it is we're doing finals, getting grades done. We were very grateful to have our grade deadline extended a little bit with these situations. It's been really helpful. At least I find for me, grading things takes a significantly longer amount of time doing it online. So having till Sunday instead of Friday should be really helpful there. But then after we finish our grades, teachers have to do course assessments and essential skills assessments and program assessments. So we have lots of reporting to do these last few weeks after we finish grading there. As far as Faculty Senate itself goes, with the removing things to off campus, we've kind of postponed voting until the fall. It was difficult to go around and recruit new people since we couldn't go talk to them. So we don't have our list of new senators yet. But when we come back in the fall, we'll do that. So hopefully that goes pretty smoothly. And then the other thing I wrote down to mention, when you guys talk about policies before, one thing Faculty Senate has kind of adopted a role of that I think we'll keep doing is we're going to try very hard to stay on top of the instructional policies because the college has like 4 different branches of policies there. So this year, everyone on Faculty Senate read through all of the instructional policies, which is one of the smallest sections of policies that we have there. And so we're slowly working on making sure that not only are people aware of them, but that when changes happen to them, faculty has input on those instructional ones, and so are the ones kind of in the classroom. So just kind of match with some of the things we were talking about before is the Senate does try to make sure that at least those members have a good understanding of it so we can help promote and support that for the rest of the faculty too. Any questions or comments or things to elaborate on?
Thank you, Nicole. Anyone?
Sorry to steal your thunder.
No, that's fine. You're cool. It's okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, moving on to item 5, ownership linkage. Anyone have anything from public?
I would say that, you know, I've had a few people in these uneasy times, and there's businesses that, and I know I spoke to Dr. Ruta this morning about it, but, you know, there's businesses that have, you know, keeping on employees, but certainly had to cut hours, or, you know, asking employees to take personal time to offset some of the hours. We're seeing that now ever more as it's getting, you know, further along in this. And I would just commend the entire Garden City Community College and Dr. Ruta and the administration, you know, that we've been able to keep everyone on. I mean, as far as, you know, and keeping their hours and not requiring them to take, you know, the personal time because of a situation that's out of their control. And I think that speaks volumes to just what a community college is, and certainly takes care of their faculty, staff, everyone that's involved, from, you know, at the lowest level all the way up to the highest. So I just, I think that's, I know from the public standpoint, the couple that have talked to me about it, they're certainly grateful because, you know, that's their livelihood too. And they expect to have an income coming in, which isn't always easy to do during something like this. So anyone else like to share anything? No? Hear from anybody? Okay, we'll go into item number 6, executive session. We do have an executive session, or would like to.
And Mr. Chairman, I move that the board recess into executive session to discuss an individual employee's performance pursuant to the open meetings exception for personnel matters of non-elected personnel, which if discussed in open meeting might violate their right to privacy. And that would be just the members of the board for 15 minutes, resuming back here.
I second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to go in.
Sorry.
Okay, motion and a second to go into executive session for a matter of 15 minutes with the board only. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. And we'll do a roll call. This is Blake, aye.
Shanda, aye.
Beth, I.
David, I.
Leonard, aye.
Marilyn, I.
Okay, Marilyn, I'll give you a call here in a few minutes, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Now you're throwing things
Thanks
at
for
me.
throwing things.
Watch that.
Oh, thanks. Yes.
Get down a little bit.
2019 when I was saying it, so.
Okay. Everyone back in? Okay. Coming back into open meeting at 7:35, and there was no action taken during executive session. Anyone would like to, discussion was discussed Dr. Ruta's, of course, last month we had Dr. Ruta's evaluation and chose to renew him for the third year. And I had a chance to sit down with Dr. Ruta and go through the comments from the board and discuss his thoughts of moving forward and what's an agreeable term. And I think we had discussion and certainly feel like at the current time and of course with the consensus of Dr. Ruta, and I think this is a great leadership avenue from Dr. Ruta, but that we're going to suggest that we hold off any kind of negotiations for compensation or contract change to Dr. Ruta and leave it basically as presented as his current contract until a further date when we have a better justification of maybe the impact of COVID-19 and enrollment and so many, the list could go on, but I'd like, again, I think Dr. Ruta suggested it and the board certainly can have their opinions on it, but I think it gives us a little better picture down the road. But to that too is I think there's a matter of question of maybe some hours that Dr. Ruta would be occurring or vacation time, and while he's not going to lose out any hours, I think I would like to at least bring to discussion of the possibility of taking Dr. Ruta's the suggestion maybe of 10 hours or if anybody would like to
10 days
or sorry 10 days 10 days of his vacation time and elect to pay those out directly to Dr. Ruta in lieu of asking for any kind of compensation or any kind of contract change at this time. And then, like I said, we can readdress that at a further date.
This is Beth. I agree with it because Dr. Ruta has, I mean, we'd have been in a tough spot with all the decisions that had to be made, the commencement and everything else. There was no way that he could take days off.
Yeah.
So I'd like to recommend.
And there's nowhere to go.
He could have come to my backyard. I would like to move that we compensate Dr. Ruta for 10 days vacation pay.
Anyone who would like to second that?
Marilyn, I'll second it.
Sorry, Marilyn, we got you a second already. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just want to say that, you know, whether we pay him right out for the 10 days or we pay his salary, we're still paying the same thing. So.
Any other discussion to it? No, I have a motion and a second to go ahead and approve the payout of 10 days for Dr. Ruta, 10 vacation days for Dr. Ruta. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, we'll have a roll call. This is Blake, aye.
Shanda, aye.
Beth, aye.
David, aye.
Leonard, aye.
Marilyn, I approve.
Okay. Okay. Motion passes, and again, we'll discuss contract terms down the road at a further date, and
We
we'll
need
keep
another motion on that.
You want to put a date on it, like January 1, December 1?
Let's
We talked about December.
Tentative date.
We'll take a tentative date of November 1st. Let's just, that way we have a discussion before the end of the year. So I and we'll keep the board apprised. I'll keep the board apprised and everything. But if we could have a tentative date of November 1st, meeting back with the board. So
Table it until.
yeah, can we have at least a? Do you want to need a motion for it? Let's do no, just table it till then. Okay. With that, I do have just a few other things that I would like to maybe get a consensus on. Next meeting, of course, is June 9th. That doesn't seem to be necessarily an issue. June, I would like to ask everyone to look at their calendars. June 23rd or 25th. That's a Tuesday or Thursday night, would be maybe around 6 p.m. Generally, we have a special meeting to go over budget items. That's to get a little better idea, so we're more prepared for July, because that's when we review the budget and approve the budget. But it's kind of hard to, for the June meeting, it's hard to have the necessary information, and so that special meeting is just focused on
Excuse me.
focused on just the budget. So if you guys would look at the 23rd, 25th, get back to Amy or myself or Dr. Ruda and we'll try to figure out one of those two dates that work better. But it would be 6, we can even do it a little later or something if schedules do not work. Have you look at that. And then the only other one would be then the July meetings. So July would be, typically it's the second week, obviously, or second Tuesday. That would be normally the 14th, or this is the 14th. Dr. Ruda and I looked at it, and we've typically gone to the third week in July. That would be the 21st. And again, that's really for preparation of the budget and making sure that we have a better, clear consensus of what the budget is going to be. Some of that information doesn't come in until later, and we don't want to make bad decisions on.
So doesn't the budget start on July 1st?
Partially data.
So July 1st is when it starts, right? The year?
Yeah, we'll have to
Yes,
work.
but it's not approved till August.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Yeah. Because
figure that's in state statute. So what I'll say.
Yeah.
That works.
Yeah. So if that's, I would like to have a consensus that we just move that to the third week of July, the 21st. Is that okay with everyone? Okay. And we'll make the necessary notation so everyone is aware that changes. But other than that, like I said, get back to Amy, myself, or Ryan about the 23rd, 25th, and everything else for June is on the go. And until then, I hope everyone stays safe, and go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Marilyn. Carla, bye, Colin.
You guys.
You laugh at me.